Bringing you news from home, across the globe and the sporting arena. A very good Friday evening to you. This is News First Primetime News, live on MTV Sports and Shakti TV from our News First Centre here in Colombo. I am Shaheen Jurangpati.
And I'm Rahna Farooq. Let's start off with a look at tonight's headlines. The Bhutan Prime Minister visits Parliament. JHU's position on the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. SLFP's stance.
Resist any amendment that the government brings, claiming it's approved by the Supreme Court.
Suspect of the Kotakethana murder case produced in court. SLFP takes legal action against the Sri Lanka Transport Board.
පහුගිය ජනාධිපති වර්ණයේ CTB බස් යොදවලා රැස්වීම වලට කටයුතු කරලා තියෙනවා.
A Prime Minister of Bhutan who is on an official visit to Sri Lanka called on President Maithripala Sirisena today for bilateral discussions. According to the President's media division, the Prime Minister of Bhutan, Losheng Ashering Atoge, had agreed on further enhancing educational and agricultural ties between the two countries and also discussed Sri Lanka's long-term processes.
During this discussion, both leaders have spoken on commencing direct flights between Sri Lanka and Bhutan. The meeting took place at the Presidential Secretariat this morning, and President Maithripala Sirisena had said that building a friendship with a nation like Sri Lanka, which has a connection to the Buddhist vision, is in fact a great moment for Bhutan. President Sirisena had also extended his appreciation to the Prime Minister of Bhutan on the support it has extended to Sri Lanka at the international fora. Accordingly, it has also been agreed to conduct bilateral discussions between the two countries, which was highlighted in an MOU being signed between the foreign secretaries of the two nations. Signifying the Buddhist relationships between Sri Lanka and Bhutan, a sapling of the Jayashree Mahabodhi is to be presented to the Prime Minister of Bhutan tomorrow at the premises of the Jayashree Mahabodhi. The Prime Minister of Bhutan arrived at the Parliament today. The Bhutan Prime Minister also witnessed the proceedings of Parliament from the Speaker's gallery. Shashindra Rajapaksa, the former Chief Minister of the Over Province, was summoned to the Police Financial Crimes Division today. He was summoned to inquire over 2 luxury buses purchased by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs being used for other purposes. He stated that the former Chief Minister was questioned for almost 2 hours. I served as the personal secretary to the President. They questioned where the bus was used for official purposes. They questioned for hours and recorded statements. This is not regarding any financial crime as mentioned by the media spokesperson. The Financial Crimes Division recorded a statement over a complaint that had been made. 2 buses were provided to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs recently. These 2 buses were to be used during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. A complaint was made that these 2 buses were used for other purposes apart from this objective. Further investigations will continue over this matter. When the investigations conclude, we hope to produce documents to the Attorney General and take legal action.
මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් තවදුරටත් විමර්ශන ක්‍රියාත්මකයි. විමර්ශන අවසානයේදී අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ නීතිපති වෙත ගොනු ඉදිරිපත් කර ඉදිරි අධිකරණ ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගැනීමටයි.
Shamali Pereira, the president of the National Lotteries Board, says that 375 million rupees from the promotional funds of the board from last year had been used for the propaganda campaign of the former president. The expenses of the National Lotteries Board for the period of 3 months from November 2014 to January this year had exceeded the limitations. A video wall had been used across the country and the NLB had spent 67 million rupees on this. In addition, 150 hoardings were erected across the country with the face of the former president. In addition, there were expenses for musical shows, dansals and the marathon of the Cartoon Network. These were the funds amounting to 400 million rupees that were allocated for promotions of the Lottery Board. Out of the 400 million, 90% of it was utilized for political purposes.
The Sri Lanka Transport Board says that payments on the use of SLTB buses for the meetings of the UPFA presidential candidate during the recent presidential election are yet to be made.
The Sri Lanka Transport Board says that a sum of 142 million rupees is to be made in payments for the use of SLTB buses during the recent presidential election.
පහුගිය ජනාධිපති වර්ණයේ මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂ
SLTB buses were utilized for the meetings of presidential candidate Mahinda Rajapaksa at the recent presidential election. A sum of 142 million rupees is due. We have to pay 150 million rupees in salary arrears. Therefore, if we receive the money owed from the previous president's election campaign, we can pay the salary arrears without any issue.
මේ මුදල හම්බුණා. ලංගම පඩියේ 7-5ක් කිගනතු අපිට කටයුතු කරන්න මේ ගන්නේ. බස් රථ දීලා තියෙනවා.
Buses were provided and we were only given 50 million rupees. 140 million rupees is due to us. We have sent a letter of demand to them. That period has expired. After the new year, we hope to execute legal action. We have sent letters of demand to 3 persons. They are to the General Secretary of the SLFP, General Secretary of the organization and the Committee Secretary of the presidential election.
A court permitted the Colombo Crimes Division to detain and interrogate the suspect connected to the murder of a woman in Kotakethana, Kahawatha. Permission was granted after the suspect was produced before the Palmadula District Magistrate today.
Mother of 3, Chandrani Swarnalata, who was killed on the 5th of this month, was laid to rest today, leaving many questions unanswered. At present, the suspect connected to the homicide is in police custody.
මෙම අත්අඩංගුවට ගත්තේ ඇයගේ දෙවන දරුවා වයස අවුරුදු
18-year-old second son of the victim is in custody. He has been in the house at the time of the incident. The suspect was with the mother in the house. The suspect was arrested over several matters that came up during the investigations. He had made a confession to the police. It is reported that he had requested money from the mother to purchase a gift for his girlfriend. As the mother had refused, he had committed the crime.
මව එය ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කිරීමේ ප්‍රතිඵලයක් වශයෙන් මෙය සිදු වූ බවටත් ඔහුගේ ප්‍රකාශයේ සඳහන් කර තිබෙනවා.
News1st today visited the house of Chandrani Swarnalata in Kotakethana, Kahawatha. When News1st reached the house, there was no one except for a police security detail. This house can be reached by 2 roads. One road falls from the Kahawatha-Kotakethana main road, while the other road is located from the rear of the house. The distance between the house and the Kahawatha-Kotakethana road is 150 meters. The body of the murdered woman, who was discovered on the 6th of this month in a waterway close to the Kahawatha-Kotakethana road. This road leads to the canal from the house where the murder took place. This road falls across a paddy field. We can travel all the way to the canal on this road. A police post and a police special task force camp is located in close proximity to the crime scene. When News1st visited the location, relatives of the victim said that they cannot believe on the statements made that the son had committed the crime. All murders took place in the same manner. Because of the similar modus operandi, believe that all of the murders were committed by the same person.
We were able to live in the houses without any fear. Now we have to live with our relatives.
However, according to the confession made by the suspect to the police, the Sri Lankan Navy searched the canal in Kotakethana for the murder weapon. However, until this evening, the officers did not find the murder weapon. The son of the murdered woman was produced before the Palmadula District Magistrate today. The Colombo Crimes Division requested court to grant permission to detain the suspect for 48 hours and question him. Magistrate Dinesh Lakmal, who inquired into the request made, granted permission thereafter. Suspect in this particular murder in Kotaketana, Kahawatha is the son of the victim. However, within this village, there lies a level of uncertainty over the suspect of these murders. Only the wall of this house knows what actually happened that night.
The Sri Lanka Freedom Party states that the party will only support the 19th Amendment to the Constitution if electoral reforms are also tabled in Parliament. The decision was reached at a meeting presided by Chairman of the SLFP, President Maithripala Sirisena. Speaking in Parliament yesterday, Speaker Chamal Rajapaksa announced that the Supreme Court has determined that the 19th Amendment is consistent with the Constitution, but certain sections require a referendum. Newsfirst delves deep into the clauses that require a referendum.
The 19th Constitutional Amendment Draft Bill was presented to Parliament by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe on the 24th of March. Later, 19 petitions were filed with regard to the new amendment. 5 of them were filed for the amendment, while 14 petitions were filed against it. Among the petitioners were Gominda Asri, Ivan Pereira, Udaya Gammanpila, Darshan Weerasekara, Venerable Bengamuwe Nalakathera, Swarnapali Vanikasekara, Venerable Mathara Anandasagara Thera, Somavira Chandrasiri, Nishanta Sri Varnasinghe, MTV Channel Private Limited, MBC Networks Private Limited, and Sisira Jaikodi. On Wednesday, the 1st of April, a panel of Supreme Court judges led by Chief Justice K. Sri Pavan started to consider the petitions. The other Supreme Court judges who sat on the panel were Justices Chandra Ekanaika and Priyasad Depp. On the 6th of April, the Supreme Court concluded considering petitions filed in connection with the 19th Constitutional Amendment. Speaking in Parliament yesterday, Speaker Chamal Rajapaksa announced that certain sections of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution require a referendum. The sections are 423, which states that the Prime Minister shall be the head of the Cabinet of Ministers. 43.1. The Prime Minister shall determine the number of ministers of the Cabinet of Ministers and the ministries and the assignment of subjects and functions to such ministers. 43.3. The Prime Minister may at any time change the assignment of subjects and functions and recommend to the President changes in the composition of the Cabinet of Ministers. Such changes shall not affect the continuity of the Cabinet of Ministers and the continuity of its responsibility to Parliament. 44.2. The Prime Minister shall determine the subjects and functions which are to be assigned to ministers appointed under paragraph 1 of this article and the ministries, if any, which are to be in charge of such ministers. 44.3. The Prime Minister may at any time change any assignment made under paragraph 2. 44.5. At the request of the Prime Minister, any minister of the Cabinet of Ministers may by notification published in the Gazette delegate to any minister who is not a member of the Cabinet of Ministers any power or duty pertaining to any subject or function assigned to such Cabinet Minister, or any power or duty conferred or imposed on him or by her by any written law, and it shall be lawful for such other minister to exercise and perform any power or duty delegated, notwithstanding anything to the contrary, in the written law by which that power or duty is conferred or imposed on such minister of the Cabinet of Ministers. And Clause 26, 104, B5C also requires a referendum. Where the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, or the Independent Television Network, or any other broadcasting or telecasting enterprise owned or controlled by the state or the enterprise of every private broadcasting or telecasting operator, as the case may be, contravenes any guidelines issued by the Commission under subparagraph A, the Commission may appoint a competent authority by name or by office, who shall, with effect from the date of such appointment, take over the management of such broadcasting corporation, Rupavahini Corporation or independent television network or other broadcasting or telecasting enterprise owned or controlled by the state or the enterprise of such private broadcasting or telecasting operator, as the case may be. Insofar as such management relates to all political broadcast or any other broadcast which, in the opinion of the Commission, impinge on the election until the conclusion of the election, and the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation and the independent television network or other broadcasting or telecasting enterprise owned or controlled by the state or the enterprise of such private broadcasting or telecasting operator shall not, during such period, discharge any function connected with or relating to such management which is taken over by the competent authority.
What we know is the Gazette, the gazetted version of the 19th Amendment, which the citizenry perused and then filed a number of petitions with regard to. Now, there is something outside of that Gazette which the Prime Minister and his team have put in to a new 12-page document which contains amendments to the amendment. Now, those 12 pages are not in the public domain. Those 12 pages have not been the subject of petitions before the Supreme Court, simply because nobody knows what's in them. In order to petition the Supreme Court, we do know from what the politicians have said that those 12 pages contain a very important clause which says that the Prime Minister's advice shall always be acted upon by the President. The President is always governed by the advice of the PM, that the President shall always act on the advice of the PM.
On the 13th of March, the Prime Minister brought forward a completely different amendment to the Constitution to the Cabinet, and according to that amendment brought forward on the 13th, the President was made a ceremonial President. The President was also made the State Leader, Leader of the Executive and Commanding Chief, while the Prime Minister was made the Head of the Cabinet, the person who appoints the Cabinet as well as the person who has powers over the Cabinet. Although the President was made the leader of the government, in other sections of the amendment, the fact that the Prime Minister is the head of the Cabinet was not removed, which is why there is a conflict of views over this gazette. What was done was, under the pretext of eradicating that clause, they brought forward a re-amendment and was taken to the Supreme Court unconstitutionally without gazetting it. Now we clearly said that the only thing that can be done according to the determination of the Supreme Court is to democratize this executive presidency. Now the President will still be the head of state, head of the government, leader of the executive and the commanding chief. But many of the powers vested in him have been slashed. That is good for the country. We are for it. That should be democratized. This actually wouldn't have happened if the Prime Minister implemented the document which all of us party leaders agreed to. Some people are trying to keep the fire going, and this is the result of that.
The amendments that were suggested to the bill gazetted by the Cabinet of Ministers. So the Supreme Court has now given its verdict, and the question is, can this be further amended? Yes, it is possible, because under our law, during the course of the debate or at committee stage, amendments are permitted, and those amendments, there's no opportunity to send it back to the Supreme Court, because what has to be Supreme Court is what is gazetted. So few amendments could be made here and after, but that has this important qualification. All these required changes require a two-third majority. So therefore, if the two-third is not forthcoming, it will not be put to the it will not become law.
There is absolutely no issue in passing this bill. All of us are in agreement of this bill, which does not show any regard to the public referendum. This bill is to be taken up for debate on the 20th and 21st. And during that time frame, we hope to table it with more reforms within the framework of the two-thirds majority in a much more reasonable manner. With that, we are working tirelessly to expedite the process of tabling the relevant articles to the Constitution to abolish the electoral system. This also will be tabled between the 20th and 21st. That is our expectation. Now, speaking to News First, Shami Rasuldin earlier this evening, parliamentarian Professor Rajiva Vijayasinghe expressed the following views on the 19th Amendment to the Constitution.
Professor Rajiva Vijayasinghe, certain sections in society are against the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. What is the reason behind this?
Well, the reason is that we're not against the 19th per se. It has a lot of very good things. But we're against the 19th as a whole because instead of fulfilling the promises of the Sirisena presidency, it fulfills one promise in a very twisted way. We promised to reduce the power of the presidency. But what this seeks to do is to hand over a lot of power to the Prime Minister. Now, certainly independent commissions are important, but you must have independent commissions with teeth.
You supported President Maithripala Sirisena's election campaign when he announced his candidature to contest against President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Were you not aware of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution?
No. What I was aware of was a promise to do 6 or 7 different things. We were supposed to be consulted on this. No one was consulted. It emerged like a teeny from Ranil Wickremesinghe's head in the form of Jayampathy Wickramaratne. When we were finally brought together, all of us protested about the excessive power of the Prime Minister. Ranil got almost cheerful and said, I'm going to tell Chandrika Kumaratunga, she promised this. I don't know whether he did it or not. But it was agreed that the clause saying the President functions otherwise Prime Minister be removed. That was removed in the Gazette notification, but instead there was the provision that the Prime Minister presides over the Cabinet.
Did you not oppose?
Of course we opposed it, and when we complained what Jayampathy Wickrama said, that was a mistake, we make human error.
Can laws be formulated with mistakes?
Exactly, that's why Jayampathy Wickramaratne should give up this idea. He said he didn't look, but that's not good enough. But then what did they do? Instead of removing that as he promised, and he promised us that would go, instead Ranil went to Cabinet and reintroduced the advice of the Prime Minister. Now you know perfectly well the Supreme Court got rid of the excessors in the 40s. In
423, 431 and 7 clauses altogether.
Ranil I think will come and say, no, but we said we are going to make the President act on advice and that is okay. So I did a paper saying we must resist any amendment that the government brings, claiming it's approved by the Supreme Court. But conversely, we must introduce an amendment for what I think the people want most of all, which is a change in the electoral system. Besides,
what is the President's position on electoral reform?
The President was very clear today. He was trying to reach a consensus, but he said, look, we're all agreed that the reforms must go together.
Where was this communicated?
At the parliamentary meeting of the SLFP and the UPFA, and the SLFP members by and large and people like me said, you cannot do this piecemeal. Someone said, let this pass if Ranil promises to bring the next, and we realized you can't trust Ranil's promises at all. He said, liar. But what we did suggest was that we introduce electoral reform as an amendment to the 19th Amendment. The people want it.
Why is the Prime Minister attempting to prune the powers of an elected executive president?
Because the Prime Minister, being a student of Jaya Jayawardena, sadly he didn't learn politics under people like Daddi Senanayake, who was a great gentleman. Jaya was a cunning old fox who wanted all power for himself. And of course that 1978 constitution does give him all power. He had unbridled power. Ranil would like to have that back. He knows he can't win it by election. And he's trying to smuggle himself in through Mr. Sirisena, who is a nice man who genuinely wants to reduce his powers, and Ranil wants to usurp them. But I think Mr. Sirisena also must realize that he should not give his powers to Ranil. He should give them back to the people.
Is he trying to achieve any personal agenda?
I think he wants power. He wants to be Jaya Jayawardena again.
What is the message you have for the President, Maithripala Sirisena?
My message to the President is, please go ahead and fulfill your manifesto as a whole. Remember, you're the elected President of this country. Your pledge was to reduce your powers. This means greater consultation with all branches of the state.
The President has said that electoral reforms will come into play with the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. What is the future of your party, the Liberal Party? You are the leader of the party. You are now a parliamentarian. What is going to be the future of your party?
Well, the Liberal Party had always worked in terms of alliances. We decided in January that we would write to the UPFA to ask to continue with the alliance, and we had a positive response from the Secretary. For the first time, they want to make it official.
Moving on to other local news, local and international leaders have expressed their condolences over the passing of the chief prelate of the Askiri chapter of the Siam sect, Most Venerable Agamaha Pandita Udugama Sri Buddhirakita Thero.
Issuing a statement, the US Embassy in Sri Lanka has extended its heartfelt condolence on the passing of the chief prelate. The statement adds that Sri Lankans and Americans who knew him respected the late Mahanayaka's ceaseless efforts to improve the lives of all Sri Lankans through his exemplary life and the teachings of the Buddha he expounded. The Chinese Embassy in Sri Lanka also extended its condolences following the passing of the chief prelate. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa in his condolence message states that the late chief prelate not only appeared for the national independence but also provided his blessings to eradicate terrorism from the country. Meanwhile, in his condolence message sent by a chairman of the Sri Lanka Mahabuddhist Society, the Venerable Banagala Upatissa Thera appreciated the work carried out by the late chief prelate towards Buddha Sasana and the society. Crowds continue to arrive to pay their last respects to the late chief prelate of the Askiri chapter. The mortal remains which lay at the Askiri Mahavihara in Kandy were moved to the Pravarupali hall of the temple this morning. The funeral will take place on Sunday at the police grounds in Kandy.
The committee, which was appointed by the Prime Minister to look into the controversial central bank bond issue in March, has reportedly handed over its report to the Premier yesterday. The committee was headed by Attorney-at-Law Gamini Pitipana. Experts opine that the committee report has not yet been made public and gives rise to suspicion.
We are now told that the report of the three-member committee has been handed over to the Prime Minister yesterday. It is astonishing that the Prime Minister hasn't deemed fit to release the contents of that report yet. It is important and imperative that just because the 19th Amendment has caused ripples in the country, that this matter is not simply and merely swept under the carpet. At a loss of 35 billion rupees to the people of this country, and we must stress this, that it is a loss being borne by the people of this country, it is a matter that simply cannot be swept under the carpet despite any new breaking news. The Prime Minister must be accountable. He must declare the contents of that report.
A police media spokesperson, ASP Aruan Gunasekara, said that the accounts of the accomplices of Velasudha, who was arrested of charges of drug peddling, are being probed at present. Court on a prior occasion banned MP Aduminda Silva from travelling abroad after his financials were investigated based on a confession made by Velasudha.
මේ වන විට අපරාධ පරීක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවෙන් 2012න් පසු
The Criminal Investigations Department is conducting investigations on him over the amassing of wealth since 2012 to date. The public too can assist in this. If there's any information over his assets, that information can be directed to the CID. The CID has also arrested a person connected to Mohammed Siddiq and Velasudha who had moved money from the country and into the country in an illegal manner. They were produced before the Colombo Chief Magistrate. The bank accounts of Velasudha and those connected to him are also being investigated. Over 60 such accounts are being probed.
මේ වන විට පරීක්ෂාවට ලක්ව තිබෙනවා, විමර්ශනයට ලක්ව තිබෙනවා.
In business news, Minister of Finance Ravi Karunanayake says that investments made by the National Savings Bank over the recent past in the Colombo Stock Exchange has resulted in a loss amounting to 1,100 million rupees or 1.1 billion rupees. The minister made this revelation speaking to the media in Colombo.
The National Savings Bank had taken its funds and invested in several companies, incurring a loss of over 1,000 million rupees. They had taken 2,600 million rupees. Today, the value of those shares are 1,500 million rupees. The loss is 1,100 million rupees. This has been done by a few persons. Chairman of the National Savings Bank, Ashwin Silva, has been instituted to hand this over to the investigative division.
An event to present land deeds to 400 selected families in the Polonnaruwa district took place at the Rajarata Mahaviduhala in Hinguragoda yesterday.
Deeds to lands were distributed to selected families across the 25 districts. This new government is only 3 months old. During these 3 months, Minister Sajith Premadasa has visited all the districts and concluded the preliminary work process. The officials have been given their respective instructions and he is engaged in this with much commitment to ensure that this program is successful.
At a time when we are committed to serve the country, all those in the Ministry of Housing and Samurdhi are a strength to the President's development program. You are a catalyst to this. At a time when we are implementing the 50,000 houses project across the country, the President has set the initiative from the Polonnaruwa district and given us the opportunity. We are happy about it. Today, the Ministry of Housing and Samurdhi will intervene to provide a number of historical resources within the Polonnaruwa district.
A High Commissioner of Australia to Sri Lanka, Robin Moody, says that Australia is hopeful that Sri Lanka will open new doors to further strengthen ties through new opportunities. The High Commissioner made this statement at an event held in lieu of the Sinhala and Tamil New Year.
The event, which took place last evening, saw a number of Urdu games being performed as well.
It's been a very good year in the Australia-Sri Lanka bilateral relationship. We are continuing to look for new areas to work with Sri Lanka and to take the investment relationship forward. Dairy sector, infrastructure, education, hospitality and tourism are all areas, and agribusiness are all areas that we're hoping to progress further in the coming year. But more broadly, the relationship is going from strength to strength between Australia and Sri Lanka. The recent election results have given us new opportunities to work together, particularly in the area of reconciliation, and we've been talking to various stakeholders about where Australia can play a useful role in helping the country to move forward on that front, and it's something we're very much looking forward to being a part of. And I remain hopeful that by the time I leave the country in about 10 months' time, that we'll have some significant investments across the line and getting established here in Sri Lanka.
And that brings today's edition of News First Primetime News to a close. It is an absolute pleasure having you with us. For the News First team, I am Shahin Jurampati.
And I'm Rahna Farouk. Thank you for watching. Have a pleasant night.